Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 35. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. As always, this is Velvet Eau Claire, your guide through all of the secrets and the behind the scenes, the sexy things, the sultry things, sometimes saucy, sometimes sexy, and, sometimes not so sexy, because this is the reality of it. This is Burlesque Stripped Down, where we take the reality of life as a burlesque or cabaret or sideshow performer, and we break it down and give you all the real stuff. So today has been the culmination of months worth of emailing back and forth, trying to find a time that worked for the beautiful, the wonderful Red Hot Annie. She is coming to us fresh out of Chicago today, and finally we were able to kind of find a time that worked for both of us to jump on to a call together, and she was also a guinea pig for some new technological experimentation as well, so I'd really appreciate that from her. We have a great conversation about all sorts of things, including, talking about failure, this idea, and whether it's a positive or a negative thing. We do fangirl out a little bit about a certain TV show that we're both obsessed with, so there is that. Now, keep in mind as well, I am still trying out something brand new that I first tried last week with the Sassy Leopard Lass, and what we did was basically, instead of me coming back to you later in the week on Thursday, Friday, Saturday with a solo hot tips, we're trying out bringing in my guests for the hot tips, because why not use some of that expertise that they have there? So this week as well, we are going to be bringing Red Hot Annie back later in the week for a second episode, our hot tips episode, and she's going to share some of her many years of teaching experience to give us a few tips there. So definitely come back in later this week to check for that. But for now, we're going to go ahead and jump right in to my interview with Miss Red Hot Annie. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am here today with the fabulous Miss Red Hot Annie, fresh out of Chicago. Chicago, one of my favorite places on the planet. And we are finally together. It has been a little bit of a difficulty to get us together with scheduling and with technology things. It's been crazy, but we are finally here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about you, Velvet?
I'm doing very well. Doing well. It's a little hot. See, I have to turn off my air conditioning in my house in order to record these episodes.
Oh, God.
And it's Florida.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's fun. No, but it's good. It's good. I suffer for my art. It's totally fine.
A little misty. Yeah, a little moist.
Indeed. Now, you are back up in Chicago at the time being, correct?
I am. Yep.
Very nice. How's it going up there?
It's going great. It's a really great city. Fantastic scene up here, and I was born in Chicago, or I was not born in Chicago, but I've lived in Chicago my entire life, so
that's awesome.
Love it up here.
Yeah, that's great. It's like your home. Yeah, I was up there just recently for Podcast Movement, the convention or the conference that we had up there, and it was the first time I had ever been to Chicago as a grown-up, because of course I grew up in Wisconsin. So we had been to Chicago several times, when I was a kid, and Sears Tower and all that good stuff, and Six Flags, and everything.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I had never been as a proper grown-up to really see it, and I'm like, this is pretty much a great city.
It is. It's truly a great city. Yeah, definitely.
Well, you mentioned a great scene. Why don't you tell us a little bit just kind of about yourself and what you get up to and kind of your history?
Well, I started performing burlesque in 2008, and I had a girlfriend who performed burlesque, and I would go see her in her shows, and I just totally fell in love, especially once I started to hear that the performers were completely in charge of their own acts. They were making their own costumes. They were choreographing them completely on their own. Something about that really struck me, because in my theater background, you would work on a show for 8 weeks with a director and with people to costume you and all of this sort of attention to the detail, but you'd work on it for 8 weeks, and then it would be gone. You'd perform it, and then it would be over. And I loved this idea of creating these pieces of work that you could perform forever. So I fell in love with burlesque, and I started performing in 2008. Shortly after I started performing, a couple of years after I started performing, I actually got the opportunity to teach. And since then, I've been teaching. I have a little studio that we opened in 2011 here in Chicago. It's called Vaudezilla Studios. And we have a weekly theater show, a weekly burlesque cabaret that we've been performing in for 3 years now here in Chicago.
That's fabulous. Yes. And of course, when I was in Chicago, I got to see your student showcase. I know you weren't there because you were off gallivanting somewhere else, but seeing that student showcase, it was really great to see. I wish I could have stayed coming on the next night as well for the, the professional cabaret show, I'm sure was wonderful as well. But it was great to see, I love watching, students perform, people that, are newer to it, and just seeing that kind of joy and the passion in their eyes. That must be incredibly rewarding to do.
It's totally rewarding. It's really the best. I totally love my students, and I just love working with people who have their eyes wide open and are looking at what they can do in the world to make a difference. And I feel like my students are super dedicated to making the world a better place. And they're really dedicated to creating really good work. And it's like really one of the best things in my whole life.
Oh, yay. That makes me smile. I love hearing that. I will say I've been, I'm not a burlesque teacher necessarily, but I have taught, in English around the world and other things. I've been a teacher for a long time. And that is one of the best things, is just to kind of have that connection. It's not every student's like that, but when you have that, when they're very open-minded, when they're interested, when they want to learn, and you can have that connection. I always say too, I learn as much from my students as they learn from me.
I absolutely feel the same way. I feel like I feel like I didn't even really scratch the surface of what burlesque could be until I started teaching it.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really compelling. You learn as much as you teach, for sure.
Absolutely. So what do you have going on right now, upcoming, that you are the most excited about?
Right now, I am the most excited about the Steel City Kitty tour that is starting on Friday. On Friday, I'm flying out to Pittsburgh, where I'm teaching workshops, and I've got some shows. We're going to Columbus, we're going to Cleveland, we're going to Detroit, Lansing. We even have a show back here in Chicago, the last show of the tour. And it's me and I believe 7 other people. It's super crazy, kooky, awesome, amazing, glamorous tour. Kat Delac from Pittsburgh organized it, and she is definitely a powerhouse, especially just an amazing producer. But it's a great lineup of performers and is going to be incredible. So I can't wait to get on the road.
So fun. How long is that tour going to last?
It's 8 days.
Amazing. Well, you're going to have so much fun, I'm sure.
I can't wait.
So you mentioned a little bit about how you started performing in 2008. Was there a particular, like a moment or a performance that you really just that you knew that burlesque was right for you? I mean, I know you said a little bit about, the fact that it was that, you could create your own acts and everything. Was there like an instant that you were just like, this is it, I'm in all the way?
Honestly, the first couple times I performed burlesque, I thought this is like a silly, fun thing that I'll probably do once or twice. And I think that I got swept up in it, to be honest, because I thought, oh, well, in 2008, I'll perform a couple times. Burlesque would be really fun. I'll do it a couple times, and then I'll go back to my theater stuff. And actually, what ended up happening was not even 6 months into performing, I got offered the opportunity to produce a show, and then I got the opportunity to produce a second show and a third show. And before I knew it, I had created this series of bar shows here in Chicago, some of which still remain under other producers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, before I knew it, I had like 4 shows every month, 4 or more shows every month that I was in charge of. Then I wanted to, of course, have really curated great work within those shows. So then I built an ensemble. And then, it's just it kind of took off without me, to tell the truth. I really thought it was going to be a total fluke.
Well, that's funny. So it just kind of happened before you even knew it was there.
Yeah, it was weird. And I think a couple months into, again, 6 months into performing, there were random articles that came out that were comparing me to other performers who existed in the scene. And it was just one of those things where I feel like I just got very lucky very early on. And it totally changed the course of my life.
So now are you a full-time burlesque performer?
I am, but
A teacher?
before then, I've actually been a freelance artist since 2005 or 2006.
Oh, wow.
So I've always had multiple things that I've worked on. I have another company. It's called Beauty Parlor Chicago, and it's actually a makeup company. So I
Cool.
do professional makeup as well as performing, and I make costumes, and there's sort of a lot of different things that I do simultaneously. So I'm a full-time artist, but I wouldn't say I'm a full-time burlesque artist per se. I'm just a full-time artist.
Got your hands in many different pots. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. One must, I feel like, to be truly full-time.
It's true. We've talked about that a couple times here on the podcast and in the Facebook groups and things like that. It's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be hard to do burlesque full time, just performing burlesque.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure it's even possible for someone other than like Dita. But even like someone like Dita and Dirty, I mean, they do other things as well.
Right,
like, you know.
exactly. Well, you have to figure anytime that there's like brand, like that you're a brand ambassador, for example, is that
Absolutely.
technically burlesque? I don't know. I feel like there's certain things that you're building off of a persona, and it's hard to it's hard to divide those things. It's hard to really identify what it is that you're building. I guess in some ways you just say those people are artists.
Yeah, that's true. We should probably just define ourselves that way. But you bring up an interesting point, and I've actually, my listeners know that we've talked about this many, many times. But I love talking to people about their their persona, and how it relates to themselves or characters. So how do you kind of delineate Red Hot Annie from the real you, from the characters? Like, where's that line for you? Is there one?
I don't know if there is one. I think Red Hot Annie is me when I'm a normal party girl because I mean, I live a pretty like day to day in my life is pretty structured and pretty in control, I'd say. But if I have a couple drinks or, like smoke a little weed or whatever, all of a sudden I feel like sometimes it's like a brand new person who comes out, who's really like fun loving and who really likes to totally be in the moment out there in the world. And so I think Red Hot Annie it's just really me, but not the business side of me, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I chatted about, if I remember correctly, it was with Ruby Jones and Kalita and a couple different people. And we talked about that same exact thing about how really if we do have a persona, often it's just one part of ourselves enhanced. It's not a completely different person or anything like that. It's just one part of ourselves that we choose to make bigger.
Absolutely. Mine is totally that amplified. Party girl amplified.
I love that. Party girl amplified. That's awesome. So, of course, I love talking about kind of the reality and like getting to know us as people, because we're all human beings and we all like have horrible days and we all fuck up and we all do things. And I will say my favorite new acronym, and if anybody listened to my June favorites episode, I talked about this. My new favorite acronym is AFOG, which stands for Another Fucking Opportunity for Growth. And I just think that's brilliant because it's this idea where it's like something bad happens or you mess up or, there's something, instead of feeling awful about it, I just start to kind of chuckle to myself. I'm like, okay, well, that's another fucking opportunity for growth is what that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Too true.
So I'd love to hear if you have anything that's happened recently that you consider one of your big AFOGs, right? You're another fucking opportunity for growth in your life. Something that you've managed to kind of reframe as a chance to grow.
Well, I think I've had a lot of mishaps on stage for sure. I've had a lot of times when the wrong music is played, for example, and I just go out on stage and you just make it up in the moment, hope that it's not a Christmas song, in the middle of July or something like that. But just, totally wrong music is played before. I actually had a great example, talk about an opportunity to learn. Like about 7 or 8 months ago, I actually did this performance to the song called Wade in the Water, which is an African spiritual. And I didn't realize at the time that it was an African spiritual. And I did a piece where where I baptized myself in the piece, and it wasn't really appropriate for the music is the key thing. And actually somebody came up to me afterwards, fortunately, thank goodness, somebody came up to me afterwards and they said, that song is kind of like, it's a little dicey to be using with the theme of what you're doing, and it was a little on the cultural appropriation topic, and that was probably a great opportunity to learn because I didn't know the background of the music, and I think that a lot of us have been in situations where there's been something that makes people uncomfortable in the audience, and I think being receptive to hearing that. It was a good opportunity to be receptive to hearing it as opposed to simply just being defensive. So I would consider that probably one of my most embarrassing recent stories. But yeah, I've had plenty of embarrassing stories.
No, but that's exactly what I think of when I think of an AFOB, right? Is like just this chance where you could have just gotten pissed off or really upset or really apologetic or gone home and cried. And maybe you did too, and that's fine too. But still, even after you have that initial like gut reaction moment, you were able to kind of turn it around and be like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, this is how I change. This is how I grow as a human being and a performer.
Absolutely. And I think in this particular case, it was perhaps to some people's mind, it was in the gray area. But I think just being open to hearing it and God, that's really hard. And I think we're really scared that we're going to be racist or that we're going to be, sexist or, bigots in general. But I think being open to hearing it is the very, very, very first step, is just to be able to hear it. So, yeah, but I've had stuff where costume pieces have fallen off or not come off, or I've had the classic mishaps as well. So
sure, yeah, I think most of us have, but it's nice when we're able to just be like, all right, well, this happened, and that's one thing I love about burlesque is that you have the opportunity to just roll with it and laugh about it when something goes wrong.
It's almost better when something goes wrong. I feel like sometimes.
I agree. Yeah.
I love when I see a performer, especially a really great performer, and something goes askew and they not only roll with it, but they sometimes even capitalize on it.
Absolutely.
And they are really they're calm and cool and collected about the fact that something has gone definitely wrong. It's exciting. It's not something that everybody can, turn into lemonade, but it's really exciting.
I actually hope every performance I am hoping to mess up on stage, to make some sort of mistake, because I want to challenge myself. I want to challenge myself to learn how to deal with that when I'm on stage.
You and me may be kindred spirits because I feel the same way. I especially like that time when you've just started to create an act. That's when I want all the stuff that can go wrong to go wrong within this 6-month period where every time you go on stage, there's some new piece of information that you're gathering about that act. Because I've had, I have this act where I paint myself out of a canvas, for example. Ooh. And I was doing this act for a couple of years before I ended up in a situation where the only available lighting was red, for example. Uh-huh. And so I started to paint while I was on stage, and you couldn't actually see the difference between the nude colored paint and the pink colored paint because of the red light. So I love situations like that because all of a sudden I know a new piece of information that I need to include for the future preparation for that act. So it's super exciting when stuff goes wrong. I love it.
Absolutely. I totally think failure. Am into it. Yeah, this is something I'm actually just doing as an adult. I'm trying to reframe my version, my feelings about failure, because I think when I was younger, I was always very much a perfectionist and things had to go right and everything. And actually just today, earlier on Facebook, I saw a video. It was an interview with the CEO of Spanx. Spanx, the underwear or whatever. And it was a great little video, which I will of course add to the show notes for this episode. And she's basically saying how when she was a kid, her dad at the dinner table used to ask her and her siblings, I think, what they failed at that day. What did you fail at today? And every time they said something, he would high five them and tell them congratulations.
Oh, that's super. Oh.
I love that. And he would be upset with them almost, or disappointed if they had nothing that they failed at that day. And I just think that's such a brilliant way to tell children that it's okay to fail. It's good to fail. You want things to go wrong so that you can learn from them.
I totally agree with that. And I also feel like if you're not failing on a regular basis, then you're not taking a big enough risk. I mean,
agreed. Absolutely.
You've got to put yourself out there. And if you put yourself out there, then you have a risk of failing.
I agree 100%. And this is something that I'm still I believe in my head. I'm still trying to internalize it because it's easier said than done. So everybody listening,
yeah.
don't think that we're all perfect about this.
No,
It's hard for us every day too.
Yeah, it's still definitely definitely a struggle.
Speaking of struggle, that's actually one of the words in my next question, which is what is currently your biggest struggle as an artist in general?
You know what? I'm trying, ironically, considering our conversation, I'm actually struggling with precision right now. That's like the thing that I'm thinking about a lot is the precision of movements, syncing things up to the exact moment and the exact beat of something. So from a technical or artistic standpoint, that's something that I'm struggling with.
That's really interesting.
Struggling maybe is too strong of a word, but that's something that I'm thinking a lot about.
Has that been a long struggle for you, or is it just something that's come up more recently? And what are you doing to kind of address it?
Well, you know what? I think for me, it ebbs and flows because I have gone through periods of time when I've been really precise, and then I will feel like it's a little too uptight and a little too prissy. So then I come back and I try to make it a little bit looser. And I feel like it's, for me, the way that I like prefer to work is to work in sort of in a spiral, I guess. So I'm spiraling closer to the thing that I want it to be. I don't try to go right for it, but I try to go around the outside and then get a little closer and get a little closer.
Ooh, I love that. That's a really great way to think about it.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes I'm working on one thing and then the next moment I might be working on something that feels almost like it's completely counter to that item. So in the last year or two, I've been working a lot on essentially relaxing and being really in the moment and I don't know, I guess just like delivering a really present a performance. So now I'm trying to keep that while also working on precision and being really specific in my choices. So that's the thing I'm thinking about. And then probably a year from now, I'll be working on relaxing again. So there's always sort of this counterbalance of things, I find.
Great. And I think that's the way a lot of us kind of need to or are kind of by default without even realizing it, just in our everyday lives as well, not even just as artists, but it's almost like a pendulum, we swing too far one way and then we go the other way and then we have to find that nice balance kind of in the middle, but we pretty much never do.
We never do. That is the human condition to never really be satisfied.
Indeed. All right. So how about when you're preparing for a show, either with a new act or an old act or anything like that, what's your biggest secret as far as your preparation for performance?
I think that my biggest secret is that I do a lot of personal prep time. So I try to take a bath and I try to really have chill time where there's no distractions. And I try to clear my mind from all of the stuff that's going on in my life at any given time. And then I try to forget everything that I know. In the moments when they're introducing me, I try to just let go of everything that I know. I try to let go of the choreography. I try to let go of every single thing that I know and just try to go out on stage and let things come out as they are, as they're going to, I guess, in some regards. I guess
that's beautiful.
I don't know what that is, but I suppose I just try to forgive any mistakes that are going to happen preemptively.
I feel like that comes from your theater background as well, because I used to do the same thing. They used to say that in theater because we'd always get freaked out before we go on stage because you can't remember any of your lines. Like those moments before you step out on stage, you forget every single line you ever had, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's horrible.
Exactly. And I think I've always loved that advice where it's memorize your lines and then forget your lines.
Yes.
And I'm always, that has always stuck with me. So I think that is still in there from the theater days, is that moment right before I go on stage, I say it doesn't matter what comes out. And it's amazing what that little permission gives you, I guess, because when I go out on stage, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, I'm not even thinking about what's going to come out, but everything that's supposed to come out comes out. And it's so I think there's a real magic to being really gentle and kind to yourself in those moments. And it's really, really hard, especially if you have come from a perfectionist background.
And
you haven't come come to terms with that in some regards.
Absolutely. No, that's really great. And it's funny because I never really thought about making that, kind of transitioning that, because of course that's something, we talk about, and I talked about in theater a lot.
Yeah.
But then in burlesque, I mean, the idea of forgiving yourself, sure, but that idea of just letting it all go right before, because I'm always so in my head. I'm always like, okay, left foot there, then I do the glove peel, and then I do this, and then I do, but just letting that go right before you go on stage and just feeling it, just being
totally
there.
And I think part of actually what made me remember that particular facet of this is how quickly the performances go.
Oh,
I mean, you get up there and you have let's say like on a good night, you have 6 minutes to basically wow the audience. 5-6 minutes. And you get up there, and if you're in your head, if you're like focused on delivering this certain kind of performance, you actually like almost lose those 6 minutes.
It's
like
true.
I've had those times when I come off stage and I'm like, I don't even remember what happened.
Right.
And that's like, to me, that's like kind of the worst. I want to remember everything about it, and I want to have been there, and I want to have like really savored it. Yeah.
Just last week on the Hot Tips episode with Leopard Lass, we were chatting about kind of, connecting with the audience and listening to your audience and getting kind of feedback from them just through their eyes or through their applause or whatever it is. And we were talking about how some people, myself included, find it hard because we're just very kind of, we're in our head during the performance, and we're not able to stay present. So I like that kind of approach as a way to kind of stay present during it. That's great.
Totally.
So how about, what is your favorite self-care practice? And of course, this can go well beyond being an artist or anything like that. Just how do you take care of yourself?
I don't really know. Whenever people ask me about self-care, I'm always like, oh yeah, I think I am still figuring out that self-care thing. I think that self-care thing is like, is it like when you go and get like massages?
See, that's the thing.
Is it like when you shop? It can be anything you want, right? As long as you...
Absolutely. I think most people immediately think of things like massages, maybe meditation, maybe a nice bubble bath. And sure, those are like classic ones. But to me, self-care is anything that kind of brings you back into yourself, makes you feel rejuvenated, makes you feel kind of just good, basically. Like just something that helps you take care of yourself internally. Like I have things when I get all uppity and stressed, certain things that I do, just like, I'm like, all right, I'm cool. It's all right.
Yeah. Every time this topic comes up, I actually go like, I actually don't have any idea how to do that.
It's hard.
It is super hard. And like the idea, like, I think it might be a little bit because I'm a workaholic, probably because in my mind's eye, I'm like, well, why would you spend that time not doing something productive? But actually, I have this great friend who is actually like definitely teaching me how to use downtime, I suppose, in a way that makes me feel really rejuvenated. And I suppose spending time with him would be part of self-care, I suppose.
Yeah. It's funny because I used to be very much a cynic about a lot of these things, including self-care and like meditation and like whatever. But it's, the last year or two, I've actually I've started to really value it. And it doesn't have to be anything like foo-foo, like anything crazy. Yeah. For me, and some people might scoff at this, but I don't care. One of my favorite self-care practices is watching Parks and Rec.
Oh, I love that show. That's like literally my favorite show.
That show. I was watching it last night, and for like the 5th time through the series, and I am still dying laughing. And to me, I know television seems like a bizarre self-care thing, but to me, it absolutely is, particularly that show, because that show, there are so many elements in it that teach me about how I want to be. I think it's a really, really smart show.
Yes, I do too.
It's a really smart show.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, we are kindred spirits.
We are kindred spirits. I can't believe that of all the shows that you could have mentioned, I think, I feel like when I watch that show, I feel the same way. I feel like it teaches me how to be. It's an amazing, like, I think Leslie Knope as this incredible leader.
Yes.
She like loves everybody. She gives people a hard time, but she loves them. She loves them so much. And she will do anything to make things meaningful. And I'm such a fan of that show.
There's so much to that show. I love The Office as well. I love Friends and all these things, but those are just more like surface level comedies for me. Yeah. To me, there's so much about, like you said, with Leslie. And actually my favorite character is Chris Traeger. And I just find him so appealing. And Rob Lowe, I give him, I'm sorry, everybody listening, we're going off on a tirade. If you've never watched Parks and Rec before, you can skip forward 30 seconds because and go watch it also. But Chris Traeger, Rob Lowe did such an amazing job playing Chris Traeger because I think that character could have been so obnoxious and horrible. But instead, to me, it's super inspiring. Like, he's so positive, but not all the time. He's also very real. There's one moment, like one episode where he says, I like to think of myself as everybody's caddy. Right? Like golf caddy.
Oh my God. And what a great fucking leader.
Right.
I mean, that's what I love about that show is I feel like you see all of these different kinds of leaders and they're all really fantastic and they all really fucking care about the people that they're with. Right. I love that show. And they're never, I mean, with the exception of Jerry, who basically has like the best wife ever. They're never really mean-spirited towards each other.
It's true.
They're all on each other's team. I think that's my dream. That's totally my dream.
Oh, I'm so glad we got to fangirl out about this. And again, to anybody listening, if you have not watched it, go watch it right now.
Yes,
go watch it. It's on Netflix. You're fine. So.
It's a little slow at the start, but it's worth it. Invest.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. That's so funny. But it's true. Like for me, that I wouldn't consider sitting and watching Friends or The Office or Star Trek necessarily self-care. But for me, Parks and Rec is because it does. Like I went through a pretty kind of a dark place back in January when I was living still in Paris. Just a lot of things happening. And literally it was Parks and Rec that brought me out of it. I know it sounds silly, but it just has that kind of effect on me. So finding something. So to me, that is what self-care is. It's just finding what works to bring you out of your dark places if you have them or semi-dark places.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep working on that one, I think.
All right, well, you let us know when you kind of come up with some good ones, and we'll start chatting about what our favorite ones are. If anybody listening, if you've got some self-care practices too, I'd love to hear what they are. You can kind of head over on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff, and let us know what you have. Kind of maybe some bizarre ones besides just like massages and baths and things. So when you're backstage, ready to go for a show, what is one thing that you always have in your little backstage burlesque kit?
Well, I do have my little kit, which is pretty much always like got the normal stocking, robe, something that I can warm up in. Is there anything weird in there? I'm not sure that there is anything weird in there. Selfie stick, which I actually never use. My baby sister got me a selfie stick for my birthday this year, and I've had a million reasons to use it, and I can't. I feel like it makes me feel like I'm 20 years old. It makes me feel very, very young in a weird way. So I still have a little bit of a hard time grabbing onto the youth culture in that regard, but I gotta get on the selfie stick. It's in my bag every week.
I like it. I like that that's part of it, and I like that it's just right now it's just for looks.
Just for looks.
That's great. All right, so the next little section is actually something brand new that I'm starting. I'm starting a lot of new things lately. And it's actually funny that you mentioned earlier your AFOG having to do with, this cultural appropriation, because this is a section I want to talk about called Controversy Corner. And I kind of want to get into a controversial topic that kind of comes up frequently. And I thought maybe we could talk, and I promise everyone listening, this was not staged. I did not plan this out, but I want to talk about cultural appropriation.
Whoa!
And so I know, isn't that weird? In sync.
I know, I love it.
So what are your thoughts kind of in general, and we can kind of move on from there. Let's spend a couple minutes kind of chatting about cultural appropriation and the role that it plays in burlesque and performance in general.
Well, first of all, I'm definitely no expert on cultural appropriation. I'm definitely learning every day a little bit more about it.
And I know it can be a touchy subject. That's why I call it Controversy Corner. So for anybody listening, we are chatting. We have no prepared thoughts on this. So if something comes out wrong, please forgive us. It's an AFOG, maybe. We don't mean, we are certainly, I think both of us neither of us have any intention to offend anyone. If we do, please let us know in a kind way, and we will gladly make amends for that.
The weird thing about cultural appropriation that I found is that I think most people are receptive to the concept that it exists, unless they have a lot of privilege. And when they have a lot of privilege, and usually it's white dudes is what I'm thinking of course, middle-aged white dudes, who, don't think that it exists, or who they don't even want you to feel bad when you're thinking about it existing. Like if I go to a white, some some middle-aged white dudes. Not all. Not all of them.
Sure. Don't offend you either. Yeah.
But some of them, if I go to them and I say, oh, there was this thing that happened and it was sort of like really offensive, like this person wanted to do this sort of thing, this sort of dance style, or wanted to wear this kind of costume, they're the first people to say, oh, that stuff doesn't exist. You shouldn't feel bad about it. Or, you should do whatever you want. And I think there's an element of it that I think that they're really trying to be supportive, I suppose is the word. But I actually think that the big thing on cultural appropriation is just to listen. I think that's the only role that a white person can really have at this point in the States, I should say, when it comes to a topic like cultural appropriation, because in our culture, in my opinion, we're way on top. We're way on top, and everything that exists in our society it's like a system that has pushed us to the top and is keeping us on the top. So the very least that we could do is to listen and to try to become aware of viewpoints that contradict the norm or the status quo as far as whiteness goes or privilege goes. But I think that's just a good practice anyways, is just to listen to the contradictory information.
Right. I agree fully. And I think that's, a very pertinent thing to be chatting about, with everything that has been going on over the last, few months and years and everything, especially here in the States. But I know things have been happening around the world as well. Just listening. And, just because there was some quote, I forget who it was. I'll add the article in the show notes. But someone was speaking. Was it one of the senators? I can't quite remember. But he said basically that just because you don't feel someone's pain doesn't mean it does not exist.
Exactly.
Like that. I forget the exact quote, but
this is like fundamental human empathy, in my opinion.
Empathy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just to listen and to realize that someone else feels something differently than you do. It's not,
and that doesn't make it invalid.
It doesn't make
yours invalid. It doesn't make either one invalid.
Exactly. And feelings are really, really weird because I think it's a part of our American culture, and I think it's part of the white supremacy in some regards, or male supremacy, to think that things have to be logical and they have to come from a logical place, and you have to defend your emotions, and you have to, and I get why those feelings exist, but I think it's irrelevant in this particular topic. This particular topic is all about, it's all about feelings, and it's all about the way that we have offended other people. And I think in my opinion, making amends, or at least at the very, very least, trying to understand.
So, as someone who, you've literally had this happen to you. I didn't know that when I was planning to talk to you about this, but what do you do when someone tells you that you've offended them?
Well, I'll tell you what I did.
With that? When you spent all this time in your act and putting it together, what do you do?
Well, the first thing that happened is I got really upset because I was like, I'm not racist, and I got totally defensive, and I completely, I was like, there's no way this can't possibly be true. And I had the first response that I think most people have. And, a lot of people stick with that first response, but I had the second response is the important response, which is as I started to get angry, I had to listen to the fact that I was getting angry and ask myself, why did I feel like, of all the things that I could get upset about, why was this the thing I was getting upset about? I mean, I have crazy things happen to me where people reject me for things, or like I don't get the things that I want all the time. That's part of life. And those things don't make me angry, but being called out on this particular thing made me angry. And I think that it partially made me angry because I was scared to death. I was scared that I was now a racist person, or that I had done something that was so racist that no one was going to forgive me. And I think that there's all of these sort of muddy, guilty feelings that are associated with cultural appropriation from a white person's standpoint. And I think that if you don't listen to all of those feelings and overcome them in your own personal time, you're never going to get to the second part, which is where you actually take a step back and you look at what you've done, and you look at the information that is being presented to you, and you try to see it from the other person's point of view. no matter how angry and defensive you feel. It's really, really hard, but it's really, really necessary. In this culture, it's the very least that somebody who would claim to be an ally could do.
Well put. So at that point, once you got a chance to kind of, analyze yourself and figure out why you were coming, was that act just simply retired? Did you rework it? Did you not do it anymore?
I put it into retirement for now, with the idea that at some point I might revisit the song and use a different song, with the same concept and the same idea. And actually, it was that was actually the easiest part of all of it, ironically. Okay. I mean, the most difficult part was having all of those feelings come up and using them as a catapult to get to the bigger, more important aspect of it. I don't think I could have lived with myself if I had kept it out there. Even if some people would have said that the act was not offensive, if there were a lot of people who came forward and said, "Oh, I don't think this is culturally appropriative," to have the people that did come to me about it were people that I really trust, and they're people that I really love, and to know that I offended them, that's enough. That's enough for me to not feel bad about retiring that act at all.
And how about one last question just before we move out of this corner, before we all relax a little bit. As a teacher, if you have a student, for example, that comes to you and that is very interested in doing something that you feel could potentially cause some controversy, some appropriation, how do you handle that as a teacher?
Well, first of all, I'm really, really lucky because our studio is super inclusive, and those sorts of topics are topics that we talk about on a regular basis within the classes. And also, we make a lot of mistakes, so we have a lot of opportunities to apologize and set good examples for each other when it comes to those things. Yeah, exactly. So mostly that has not been an issue. I'm trying to think if that has come up, and if it has come up, I imagine that my response is, I can't think of a specific example, but the general thing is that I'm really, I like to use things as learning opportunities. So if it was a class of 6 or 7 people and they were working on solos and somebody came forward and they had something that was appropriative, I would probably start by asking them questions that would help them think about it themselves, as opposed to just calling them out on it per se. Because I think a lot of times we just make mistakes because we're not thinking about some other element of it. If I had to be blunt about it, I would be blunt about it. But I'm really lucky because I think that my students trust me a lot, and I feel like they would hear what I would have to say on that without feeling like defensive about it. And if they did feel defensive about it, I think that they're big enough people that they would, by and large, still hear it and still implement it. Obviously, you can't speak for everybody, but I think that is actually pretty true. And Chicago is a super liberal city, so that's also an element of it that I think comes into play.
Definitely. I mean, do you think that, I'm sure it's different in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. Do you have any thoughts on where sorry, I said it was the last question, but it's not. Do you have any thoughts on where that line is? If you're putting together an act and you're like, well, this has some cultural elements, but I'm really more paying homage, like I'm not appropriate, there's where the controversy comes in, right?
That's really complicated. And it's particularly complicated, I think, if you're a white person, because I am counting on the opinions of other people to guide my total understanding of what cultural appropriation is. There are certain things that are definitely in that camp, and there are certain things that are a little bit more dicey. I think I hate to say this because I hate this as a general mantra, but I guess if you know it when you see it, and maybe you're wrong, but if it's skating the line, then I guess what I would do is I'd ask questions and see if that person can clarify where their act is coming from, because it would be a real shame if they're not even intending to do something offensive and they are. If you're
Right.
trying to do something offensive, it's a totally different act than if you're accidentally doing it. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
And part of burlesque is provoking and doing all of these things. So that's where part of the, the thing lies as well. I guess we'll table this topic for now. I'd love to maybe sometime on the thing get some, especially with some not just two white girls talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
we need some other perspectives, and maybe we'll do a panel or something sometime on it, just to kind of get into it in all very respectful ways. We all just want to learn. We want to get better at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we move out of the danger zone. Everybody, it's all good. All right. So next up, I always like to do a little section called Pick Your Poison. And we've talked a lot about burlesque and performance and teaching and artistry and controversial things and all of that. But this is a little section just to get to know you as a human being a little bit better. I've got 10 different questions here, but you only need to pick one of them. So just a number 1 through 10.
7.
Number 7. What did you care most about when you were 10 years old?
Oh, I cared most about people liking me when I was 10 years old. I really wanted people to like me. I think a lot of us did. Yeah, I think that's about 5th grade. I think that was about the time when I started to realize that like people could be mean to each other, and I could be mean to other people. They could be mean to me, and I really didn't want that to happen. Yeah, I think probably that's the most honest answer.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that, was it something you were conscious of at the time?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I was conscious of the fact that I wanted people to like me until I was an adult.
Interesting.
I think at the time I just was very like, intense and sort of out there and crazy and not aware of it. No way.
I think we are kindred spirits, actually. The more we talk, I'm like, I think this is, she's like me.
Yay, good.
The real test will be this next section here, which is called This or That.
Okay.
This is going to be our kind of rapid fire, quick fire. Okay. And you're going to get 2 options, and you just choose which one appeals to you the most.
Okay.
And you may interpret these in any way that you choose.
Okay.
I'll just throw that out there.
Okay.
Any way you like. All right. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's do it. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
Really? Even though you're from Chicago? There's Dunkin' Donuts everywhere in Chicago. I love it.
I think I might be hoity on that. I'm not even sure why I picked Starbucks.
It's all right. Because it's quick fire. You got to do it quick. Yeah. All right. City or country?
City.
Movies or TV shows?
Movies.
Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini?
Oh, that's impossible.
I know.
Oh, I have to say Dirty Martini.
A dirty martini or a pint of beer?
Dirty Martini.
Yeah. Day or night?
Night.
Harry Potter or Star Wars?
I haven't even seen Harry Potter, don't know anything about it, so I'd have to say Star Wars.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Good job.
Just don't ask me Star Trek or Star Wars. Then I'm in trouble. Well, and then I'm going to piss somebody off regardless.
They're both very good. They're both so good. All right. How about top or bottom? In any interpretation you like. Bunk beds,
switch. If I had to pick one, I would say, well, fuck me. I don't even know. I think I'd have to say top.
She literally had a lot of trouble with that one.
That's a really tough one. That's what I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Oh, interesting.
Which is how you know that I'm a switch.
You must be. Exactly. How about mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
Classic or neo-burlesque?
Oh, classic.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Marvel or DC?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't care?
I don't know the difference between them. Marvel? Is that
Marvel's
the answer? Avengers.
DC is like
Marvel.
Superman. There you go. Good call.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. Okay,
whatever. It's fine. How about sleep or sex?
Sex. Oh my God. And how? Easy.
And how? How about heels or bare feet?
Heels.
Yeah, good. And lastly, because I started performing when I was living in Paris. You were a visiting teacher over there at Burlesque Milan. That's how we first got in contact with each other. So I have to ask, Paris or Chicago?
Oh.
I know.
Oh, goodness gracious. That's a really hard one.
It is.
Well, Chicago. Chicago.
I know. I figured it was coming. It's your home. I understand.
It's hard. I only pick Chicago because of the people that I love who are here. That's the only reason that I picked Chicago. Otherwise, I would say Paris.
Sweet. Yeah.
No
Awesome. All right. Relief. The quick fire section is over. You can relax. And before we wrap up, I'd love to know, as someone who is very involved in the burlesque community, especially there in Chicago, how do you typically stay current on all of the happenings and the news of the burlesque community?
I actually try to stay out of the loop, actually.
Fair enough.
I mostly find it kind of depressing, to tell the truth, because I feel like there's always sort of something that's being unfolded or being looked at. Like, I think Facebook is probably my best source for staying up to date on things, but I find it incredibly depressing. I can't get in the loop about what's going on in the burlesque community.
See, this is probably why you don't need all the self-care practices, because you just avoid it from the beginning.
I think that might be a little bit of an element of it, but I do sometimes get wrapped up in it, and then I just try to keep perspective, because it's not real world. And like, the people that I really care about talk to me in real life about things that are bothering them. So I would rather spend my time on that than sort of like fake conversation, or not fake, but virtual conversations about things with people I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. How about videos? We all love videos. And I was actually just chatting earlier with a young Miss Allie Boubois, who was on, she's from the Distress Dolls, and she was on, and she was telling me all about how when she was a new performer, she watched your tassel twirl instruction video about 15,000 times, she said. Like, over and over and over.
Oh, okay. That's where that came from.
A lot of times.
Oh, that's super.
So I know you've got that video out there, but I'd love to hear about 2 YouTube videos. One perhaps of you or your troupe or your students or whatever that you love, and one other one that you just can't get enough of right now, whether it's burlesque related or not.
Oh, the second one's going to be hard. Okay, the first one, let's see. I am kind of obsessed with a floor work act that my students did at the last student showcase, the one that you were at. So that video is probably top of my list, it's called Les Sirènes, which is mermaids. It
was so good. It was so good. I remember that one.
Oh, good.
So good.
I'm so glad. Yeah, and I'm getting to revisit it for our August Vaudezilla show, which is really cool. And then probably my second one that I kind of can't get enough of is this live performance that Bjork does, which is All Is Full of Love. And that's mostly because my cat died a couple weeks ago, and I'm totally so sad about it. So
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. He was only the best cat that's ever been. It's no big deal. It's no big deal.
I'm gonna cry.
Oh yeah. So that's kind of like, that was his last song, and so I have been watching that video a little bit on repeat because I'm kind of a sap. But
what was his name?
Yeah. Waffles.
Yeah,
he was the best.
We love you, Waffles.
Yeah.
Okay. All the love to Waffles.
Yeah.
All right. So for everybody listening, of course, as always, you'll be able to see the show notes for this episode, everything that we've been talking about, some links. Maybe I'll do a little Parks and Rec teaser in there as well. And these YouTube videos, all that good stuff. They're going to be over on the show notes page, which you can find at burlesquestrippeddown.com/Annie, ANNIE. And that'll be her personal URL for all of our good stuff there. So as we wrap up, Annie, what can I add to that show notes page that'll help us kind of keep up with you, get in touch with you? Because I'm sure now everybody just is obsessed with you and wants to learn more, right?
Oh, wow. I love it. Yes, good. I hope so. Well, the best place to get a hold of me is my website. My website is redhotannie.com. And if you're in Chicago and you want to check out our shows or our classes, the best website is vaudezilla.com. That's VAUDZILLA.com. And besides that, I'm on Facebook, and, I try to answer almost all of my emails. So
awesome. Perfect. Well, I'll add all that up there, and we'll be able to, and I highly recommend for anybody that is in Chicago, definitely check out those shows because they're a lot of fun, and take some classes too. That'd be a blast. So Annie, thank you so much for being on today. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to share with our audience?
No, I can't think of anything. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. For everybody listening too, you can take a listen on this coming up. You know me, I'm sometimes Thursday, sometimes Friday, sometimes Saturday. For our Hot Tips episode, Annie's going to be sharing some of her special hot tips with us podcast too. So definitely stay tuned to check that out. So thank you again so much. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Can't wait.
And there you have it. Red Hot Annie, the ringleader of the fabulous Vaudezilla up there in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America. Fabulous woman to talk to. I was really excited to find a kindred spirit of sorts there and to fangirl out a little bit about my favorite Chris Traeger and all the other characters on Parks and Recreation. I'm super looking forward to having a Parks and Rec marathon night some night when we finally all get to meet. Perhaps we'll even do a Parks and Rec themed burlesque show. That could be interesting. We will see. So as I mentioned, Annie will be back with us later this week, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how to perform one's first solo number, or rather how to prepare for that solo number. So she has some really good advice on that. Of course, she has been a teacher for a long time, and so she's worked with lots of brand new artists or artists that are preparing their very first solo number. So she's got some really good advice, some kind of unique advice for approaching that. So definitely tune in later this week. In the meantime, as always, please do share this episode with your friends. If you are on iTunes or whatever your preferred podcast listening platform is, definitely take a second to maybe leave a review or whatever is done. I know on iTunes it's a rating and review system, so whatever's done on your particular app, that would be really, really great. Helps us get the word out there. Also helps me know that I'm not just kind of talking into the darkness, into the void. Oh, hello, hello, hello. I just like to know that you're out there. You can do that, of course, by doing that late rating and review. You can also send me an email, velvet@burlesquestrippeddown.com. You can go over to the show notes for this or any other episode, which is going to be at burlesquestrippeddown.com. This one is going to be burlesquestrippeddown.com/Annie, ANNIE, and that's where you'll be able to find the show notes for this episode as well as for her episode later this week. And at that point, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the page. You can leave a comment in the comment section, or you can go over to the right-hand side of the page and click Leave Me a Message, and you'll be able to leave a voicemail so that I can hear your beautiful voice. Of course, we're on Facebook, Burlesque Stripped Down. We're on Instagram, Velvet Eau Claire, Twitter, Velvet Eau Claire. So any of those social media interwebs places, you can also reach me. I would love to hear back from you. Definitely take a couple seconds if you have some time and let me know that you're listening. Share it on out with all of your friends so that we can get as many ears listening as possible. If you are a teacher, definitely tell your students about it as well. Definitely share it out there, and we will catch you again later this week, and then, of course, next Monday with another guest interview. So until then, make sure that you stay sexy.